Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Today is 24th of October. Now it's 3 p.m. Moscow time, and as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments that Russian media is focused on. And update news segment might be quite a lengthy one because there is a lot of news. Presidents of two countries, Russia and US, are making headlines with their statements and their policies, and a lot is happening. Otherwise, too. Although before I start, dear friends, let me notice that after news segment, I will react if there will be any super chat on Rumble. I'm streaming on both my channels on YouTube and Rumble simultaneously. So if any super chat on Rumble, I will of course react on it. And if any question comes during the stream through either PayPal or Boosty platforms, and so okay, that's being said, dear friends, let's go through some news. As I said, a lot is going on, and let's start with some reminder that a few days ago Trump canceled a meeting with Russian President Putin in Budapest. He personally made such a statement, and also US introduced new anti-Russian sanctions. And first of all, these sanctions are hitting Russian energy giants, Rosneft and Lukoil companies. And yesterday, during their conversation with the media, Trump was asked basically that Russian side is kind of ironic about these sanctions, basically understandably so, by the way. I mean, it's like 30,000 plus sanctions already on Russia. So if anybody thinks in the West that couple of hundred more sanctions gonna change our attitude towards the topic or subject, they are mistaken big time. And Trump was asked about it. That Russians seems like don't really impressed with these sanctions, and Trump went to say that you know what, let's wait for another 6 months. Let's see what kind of mood they will have after that. I can give you a short video of that episode of Trump's conversation with reporters there in meeting was in White House, I guess. But first, let me find the video itself. That's the video, by the way.
Basically said today that Russia is immune from U.S. sanctions. He said that it would not impact the Russian economy in any serious way. Is he
Good.
wrong?
I'm glad he feels that way. That's good. I'll let you know about it in 6 months from now. Okay. Let's see how it all works out.
Okay, let's see. And by the way, if anything, it's a Trump and Republicans should be wary because before midterm elections are how long now? It's less than a year, isn't it? 8 months left, 10, something like that. And you think what is going to happen on energy prices if Russian Rosneft and Lukoil, or Russian oil exports basically, will decrease? You think what is going to happen? Of course, prices on oil gonna increase, and this process has already started. And if anything, Trump, self-proclaimed genius of modern times, should think about consequences that the Republicans going to face. And let's be real, by the way, most likely U.S. will lose a majority in the Congress after midterm elections, and that will be a good lesson for them. That will be a good lesson for them, because you tell me how many America First people in U.S. are disappointed with Trump and his administration for numerous reasons, not just because Trump continues to keep U.S. in this proxy war against Russia, but also because of cover-up of Epstein files, Epstein story, because of basically deployment of militaries all over their country. And many Republicans are not happy about it. Many Republicans are not happy about many other things that Trump is doing. Right? Farmers are annoyed, by the way, with Trump's tariff wars. Right? Economy is feeling bad. Right? US debt is increasing on a record pace, right? It's already 38 trillion plus, by the way, right? So Republicans and there are many neutrals definitely not going to vote this time around for these morons, right? And therefore, most likely, they're going to lose a majority in the Congress. So I'm saying it's not Russia that should be worried about these tariffs or sanctions on Russian energy companies. We will manage to deal with this situation as we did with the 30,000 other sanctions. It's the US Republicans, right, that should worry that they're going to lose majority in the Congress. And hopefully they will, by the way. They have to teach the lesson, right, for that. But for now, as you can see there, Trump is kind of, hee hee ha ha, like all in smiles and stuff. This smile gonna be gone soon from freaking face of this animal. Let's continue with some other news now. And at this point, by the way, as you can understand, I have no respect for anybody that represents Western so-called elites. Literally nobody there deserves any respect, and I'm not gonna play politcorrectness or something like that. Animals have to be called out and called what they are. They are freaking rabid animals and should be exterminated, including US leadership, man. Period. There is nothing to discuss there, right? It's a shame on US citizens that they have these rabid animals as their leaders, man. They should be shamed. All US citizens should be shamed for that they have these despicable creatures as their freaking elites. That's it. Now, let's continue with some other news. And if anybody don't likes, by the way, truth, then, there is many other channels out there that love Trump, love every nonsense that he does. And, you're more than welcome in those channels, right? But I'm not messing around. I'm not playing no games, man, right? I then definitely have no respect to my enemies and enemies of my people, for sure. But meanwhile, this aggression, this hostile move from US seems like, according to Western propaganda outlets, had some impact on Chinese and Indian companies, allegedly. And Reuters, for example, is reporting that Indian refineries are ready to significantly reduce raw material purchases from Russia. The largest private buyer of Russian oil in India, Reliance Industries, will be forced to cut or stop completely imports of Russian oil. The country might change its oil strategy and aiming global pressure. And this agency reports. And you know what? Okay, just do it, man. I had the doubts that India would manage to withstand pressure from Washington. And if Modi and his cabinet will bow down to US, bow down to Anglo-Saxons once again, Anglo-Saxon elites, then I guess current ruling party in India and Modi as a politician is finished. I don't think Indian people gonna like that their leaders are acting as if they are still slaves of their Anglo-Saxon elites. And they will be seen as such once they will officially submit to Anglo-Saxon elites, right? And seems like, there is just too many reports that that's exactly what New Delhi is preparing to do. Okay, by the way, their decision. Let's see how this will play out for Indian leadership. And the country itself too, by the way. They should choose their friends and enemies, man. If they prefer to be friends with America and be enemy or hostile towards Russia, okay, by the way, okay. Don't expect Russian support then when time will, change, right? But anyways, let's wait and see what they're gonna do first, right? Indicators are that their Indian leadership is preparing to bow down to Anglo-Saxon elites and cut not just their purchases of Russian energy, but downgrade significantly relationships with Russia, right? So we will find out. And also Reuters is reporting that China's state oil majors suspend Russian oil buys due to sanctions. So Reuters, citing sources, reports that major Chinese state oil companies, including Sinopec, PetroChina, CNODC or OC, and Zhenhua Oil have suspended or significantly reduced their purchases of seaborne Russian oil following US sanctions on Russian oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil. And in case of China, it is also interesting what Beijing is hoping to gain from this hostile move towards Russia. What might happen might be that some new companies will be created, right? And these new companies, either in Russia or in China or maybe in some offshore islands, right? And these companies will play as a mediator. So Russia will sell oil to these companies, newly created companies, and these newly created companies will resell then oil to these Chinese majors, right, in oil business, because China cannot cut off Russian oil supplies. They just cannot, right? And I don't think Beijing is in a position to jeopardize relationships with Russia. They can do it for sure, but I don't think this is in the best Chinese interests to destroy relationships with Russia, and I don't think they can afford this in the long term, right? Because if Beijing will destroy relationships with Russia, then China is finished quite effectively, right? China is finished. There are going to be no obstacles for the West to eliminate this country. So Beijing, of course, knows about it. While Russia standing strong, at least they are secure from the north, right? And that's why I'm saying I don't think China is in a position to afford jeopardizing relationships with Russia. So some alternative ways will be found to continue cooperation with Russia, not just in the energy field, but in other sectors also. It is in not just Russian interests, but Chinese interests, of course. But when it comes to India, a bit different story. In India, there is a very powerful political class, basically, that is controlled by the West. They love to be slaves of the Anglo-Saxon elites, those so-called politicians in India. We all know this, right? This is not a secret or something. There is a very powerful lobby that Washington and London still have in India, and they will love to turn India into a slave of Anglo-Saxons again and enemy of Russia, for example. And they will do it, by the way. They might succeed in that, right? Let's not kid ourselves. I think Reuters is on point here, even though I don't really have much trust in Reuters or any Western media outlet. But it's not just Reuters. A number of other media outlets are also reporting that India already half decreased its oil purchases in about 50%, even before U.S. sanctioned Rosneft and Lukoil, right? And they did it because of their American pressure. So it seems like India is about to join anti-Russian camp. Okay, by the way, unfortunate, very unfortunate, but it's India's decision, by the way. If they want to be friends with their Russian enemies, okay, good luck with that. But meanwhile, Russian president did made quite interesting, I will say, statements about sanctions, about many other topics. And for example, Putin stated on US and EU sanctions that this is an attempt to pressure our country, of course, and no self-respecting nation will make a decision under the pressure. He is 100% correct, by the way, and I hope India's current government listens to his statements. Let me give you some short clips of Russian president's statements here. So
what do we have here? It is an attempt to exert pressure on Russia. But no self-respecting country, no self-respecting nation will never make any decisions under pressure. And obviously, Russia has this privilege, has this prerogative to believe to be among this list of self-respecting countries and nations.
So that's one statement. That's the one statement. And let me also give you statement that Russian president made in regards to this U.S. decision to take hostile steps against Russia. This is about oil that he spoke.
Our oil and our petroleum product will be removed from the global market. The prices will grow, and we discussed it with my American counterpart. It will result into the spike, in the upsurge in the fuel, in the energy, including at the gas stations, including the U.S. The United States will not be excluded from this. And if we look at the calendar, the political calendar in the U.S., we can understand how sensitive these matters are. And if such decisions are made, we need to understand who will benefit from those. But for us, it is important that we feel confident, we feel stable, and despite some losses that we will obviously face due to a number of circumstances, our energy sector feels quite confident.
And also on move itself from U.S. side, Russian president said...
So that then, of course, it's an unfriendly step towards Russia. It is obvious. It is not going to strengthen Russian-American relations that we have just started to restore with such actions, with such steps. The U.S. administration is damaging the U.S.-Russia relations. As for
And this is Putin himself is saying, and therefore, I really hope he will stop thinking that he might have some agreement with Washington, with Americans. He cannot. He just cannot. No one can, by the way, right? Because U.S. will never honor anything, right? Trump flip-flops are legendary. And this can be said about U.S. administration in general, historically speaking, right? This administration may sign up for any deal with anyone, and next administration will undo everything, right? So until political system in U.S., economical system in U.S., and elites, so-called elites in U.S. are not demolished completely, and until something new is built there, no one actually should expect to have any decent relationships with the U.S. And it is quite objective say that goes as being enemy of US is dangerous, but being a friend of US is fatal, right? I think this is a historically accurate statement. One might argue, isn't it? But well, anyways, let's continue, dear friends. You have heard what Russian president said about these sanctions and so on. Russia will withstand, of course, all this pressure. But it's not just the US, obviously, that is hostile towards Russian Federation. Europe, globalist controlled Europe, is going crazy, of course, also. And yesterday, EU member states attempt, by the way, to come up with some final resolution in regards to frozen Russian assets or immobilized Russian assets, as some call this stuff, right? And they were planning to steal it. Right? They were planning to literally steal about 140 billion euros of Russian assets that are in Euroclear, right? In Belgium, and they failed to reach the solution. Belgium vetoed basically this attempt of the globalists and globalist-controlled regimes in Europe to steal these assets. And what decision they managed to come up is that, well, they will come back to this topic, matter of officially formalizing stealing of Russian assets in December. So probably they will try their best to pressure Belgium to agree on stealing of the Russian assets. And when it comes to Belgium, by the way, Prime Minister of this country Bart de Wever, before meeting began, did made a statement where Belgium stands. What is the Belgium's position? He said basically that, you know what, you want to take this asset, still basically, okay. But let's take a combined responsibility then. Why this have to be on Belgium only? Because one day Russia might come and say, well, where is my money? And what should we do in that case, right? Let's divide responsibility among all of us. And if we've been then asked for money, then every EU member state will chip in to give them back their money, right? Quite a reasonable position, by the way. Belgium don't really want to be seen as a country that opposes anti-Russian moves in any way, shape, or form. No, they are all about Russophobia and Russia hate, right? But this is very painful subject when it comes to this Euroclear and their foreign assets in Euroclear and other institutions there. This is very painful assets because Russian 140 billion or 200 billion, by the way, whatever this number is, it's pennies compared to overall volume of money that was invested in these institutions, right? And if Belgium is afraid that, and number of other officials in the West, including head of EU Central Bank, they are afraid that once they will steal these assets, all the other countries, all the other investors will say, you know what, these people not just are freezing their assets, they are stealing not just their profits from their assets, but they are stealing assets themselves too. So you know what, we just cannot keep these assets in Europe no longer, right? And they will have every reason to think that way. But anyways, let me give you a short video of this Belgian Prime Minister. He will explain his position better. So that's what he's saying, dear friends.
Forward to the discussion on the immobilized assets, not the frozen assets. There's a big difference. The sovereign assets, there's the idea of confiscating them to give them to Ukraine. I'm looking for the legal basis for this decision. This is not a detail. Even during the Second World War, immobilized assets were never touched. So this is a very important step if we would like to take it. We have three demands. I want a full mutualization of the risk, because there is a big risk. We will suffer from enormous claims. So if we want to do this, we will have to do this all together. We want guarantees if the money has to be paid back, that every member state will chip in. The consequences cannot only be for Belgium. And the third demand is that every country who has immobilized assets moves together with us, because we are the only ones. Euroclear is the only financial institution that offers the windfall profits to Ukraine. We know that there are vast amounts of Russian money in other countries who have always been silent about this. If we move, we must move all together. That's European solidarity. If these three demands, who are quite reasonable, I think, are met, then we could go forward. If not, I will do everything in my power at the European level, also at the national level, politically and legally, to stop this decision.
And he did, by the way. And he did. Europeans, his colleagues basically from EU member states didn't agree to take any responsibility for stealing of Russian assets, and Belgium vetoed the decision. They said, you know what, no, we are not allowing you to steal anything then in that case, right? Because they are afraid, by the way, and afraid rightfully so. This is Russian sovereign assets. You cannot touch this. It's already big time controversial what they did while freezing these assets, or immobilizing, as they're saying, and while stealing profits from these frozen assets. World community is already kind of shocked with this theft, right? Because this is clear theft. And now European so-called elites openly discussing stealing whole assets. By the way, even fact that this topic being discussed on such a level should be warning shots for everybody in this world that have any investments in European jurisdiction. They should begin taking out their assets immediately, right? And many will. I have no doubts about it. Many will. And the process of outflow of investments from Europe will only accelerate, right? But for now, decision was made to postpone discussions for until December, and they will then go back to this matter. Probably, meanwhile, they will try to bully Belgium leadership as much as they possibly can, so that they will agree to steal these assets. And one should also keep in mind, dear friends, that when we are talking about these Russian assets that are frozen or immobilized in Western jurisdictions, being EU or UK or US, in case of Europe, for example, did you know that among frozen assets, there is not just assets of the central bank of the Russian Federation, but there is also assets of hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens, right? Small investments, by the way, 20, 30, 40,000 investments, right? And these assets, these investments of private citizens that are not under sanctions, did nothing wronger by any means whatsoever, even by European elites' decisions, right, or statements. It's ordinary people that invested some little sums, some maybe bigger, some lesser, but we are talking about hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens that invested in European assets, and their money being frozen. And now Europe is discussing to steal assets of these people too, right? That not even sanctioned. They did sanction Russian Federation, right? And they are arguing now that it is justified to steal assets of the central bank, therefore, of Russia. But what about these hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens that are not even sanctioned? Why you freeze assets of these people? Why you immobilize these assets, sir? And why you are discussing now to steal it? What the hell, man? That's the level of degeneration in Europe. That's the level of degeneration of the euro, by the way, at this point. That's what is happening. They are stealing private investments too of their ordinary citizens. And yet again, most of these hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens that invested, they have small investments like 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, right? It's not this is not oligarchs, by the way, that invested, right? It's just ordinary people that, someone might sell their house and had some, free money and decided that, let's invest, right? And they did. And, that was a very bad decision, I guess, right? To trust European jurisdiction, that was a very bad decision. Most likely they will all lose their money. Not just central bank will never, ever receive back its assets that central bank invested in the West. But unfortunately, this ordinary, my fellow countrymen that had a trust into European financial and the banking system, they're gonna lose too, whatever they have invested. Unfortunate, but that's what modern West is, by the way, right? Anyways, as I said, a lot of news, dear friends. So let me continue. And what I have next here, and on the topic, by the way, of these finances, right? Most likely it's only a matter of time, and this about like 300 billion of Russian assets will be stolen, right? 100%. I have no doubts about it, right? And on this matter, you might ask, well, what will Russia do? What is the Russia's financial situation, and so on? And well, first of all, I will remind you that there is about 300 plus billion dollars of Western investments that most likely will be confiscated by Russian side once West will steal Russian assets, and Russia will be in a position for sure, from moral standpoint, from every standpoint, to confiscate Western assets in that case, right, and compensate for damages to Russian side, not just central bank, but also private citizens of Russia that invested in the West and their assets were stolen. So Moscow will have no much option but to confiscate Western investments. And on top of that, we should keep in mind that Russia has quite a larger reserves, by the way. There is several funds here in Russia, National Welfare Fund, also International reserves, and overall volume of these reserves are about $1 trillion. About $1 trillion. So Russia definitely has quite a good safety cushion. And on the topic of international reserves, RIA Novosti reported that Russia's international reserves reached a new record. So volume is increasing of this safety cushion. Russian international reserves grow by 1.8% from October 10th to 17th, just in a week, reaching a new record according to central bank reports. Reserves amounted to 742.4 billion US dollars, increasing by 12.9 billion over the 1 week, by the way. As of the end of the day on October 10, they were valued at 729.5 billion. And dear friends, just like day before yesterday, in previous updates, I did share information also from central bank, I believe, that among Russian reserves, gold reserves, I mean gold reserves in metal, by the way, that are in central banks' hands is up to 300 billion. Russia has 2,300 ton, 300 plus, by the way, 2,300 plus kilos of tons, sorry, of gold. You know, it's not just investments, not just foreign currencies that central bank holds and some papers, but it's a gold too. 2,300 plus tons of gold is in vaults of Russian central bank, which is also quite significant, right? And hopefully Russian central bank will invest in gold more, because 100% if gold is cost like 400, how much is gold now? 4,000 something. It's only a matter of time. Gold will be 5,000, 5,500 or 6,000, right? Gold price is only gonna go up in next decade also, right? So if it was up to me, I would definitely invest much more in a gold. So yes, that's when it comes to safety cushion for Russian economy, by the way. We have around $1 trillion, Russian Federation, to make sure that if any sector of the economy will need any assistance, right, if federal budget will need any assistance, Russia is in a position to deal with all the obstacles, right? Let's continue with some other news. And well, Russian president, by the way, did issued quite a strict warning, and I highlighted this in the headline of today's live stream too. Putin threatened basically a stunning response, or overwhelming, let's say, response in the event of a Tomahawk strikes on the Russian Federation. And it is interesting that Russian president spoke about Tomahawks again, even though formally US president said that decision is not made to transfer Tomahawk missiles to be launched against Russia. And it's a legit question to ask why Russian president spoke about Tomahawks again, when Donald Trump just like a few days ago said that US is not deploying Tomahawk missiles against Russia. Maybe Trump was lying about it. Don't you think that this is a possibility? Maybe Trump was lying. And Typhoon launchers and Tomahawk missiles actually were transferred to Europe, and maybe are prepared now to be transferred in secrecy as much as they can, to keep it secret, into Kiev-controlled territory, and then to be deployed against Russia. Maybe that's what is happening, and therefore Russian president reacted on the topic of Tomahawk. That should not be relevant at this point after Trump's statements. But yet again, when it comes to Trump, you cannot take anything from him for face value, because he just lies too much, right? And I assume this statement of Russian president definitely means that U.S. most likely U.S. Tomahawk missiles, or potentially some other long-range weapon systems already being prepared to be deployed against Russian Federation, already being transferred to European NATO member states' territories, potentially maybe even on a Kiev-controlled territory, right? And Putin find it necessary to issue such a strict warning that response will be overwhelming. And I can show you some short video on that, dear friends. Let me show you a video with a statement of Russian president.
Federation. If such weapons is used to strike the territory of the Russian Federation, the response will be very serious. It will be overwhelming even. Let them think about it.
So you see, Russian president is saying that response in the case of this long-range strikes will be overwhelming. And one of the big Telegram channels today reported, based on statements of Peskov, allegedly. I have not seen Peskov's statement personally yet. And so this one of the bigger Telegram channels stated that Peskov said Putin was talking about not just about Tomahawk strikes on Russia, but about long-range strikes in general, right? About long-range strikes in general. I will try to find that quote of Peskov, and we'll share in next updates. But in any case, Russian president, who is usually very diplomatic, very polite in his statements, he made quite a strong statement that in case of these long-range strikes with Tomahawk missile and potentially with any other, Russian response will be overwhelming. And who knows, maybe Russian Oreshnik missiles, by the way, are already on standby. Maybe Russian Oreshnik send their other weapon systems with the conventional warhead, or maybe even with their nuclear warheads, are on standby to basically, if order comes, do whatever is necessary in order to protect Russian Federation and best interests of the Russia, right? I think a very important statement there from Russian president. What you will say, dear friends? Will the Western elites take this warning from Russian president seriously or not? I think they will not listen to Russian president. I'm afraid. I think Western elites probably are absolutely confident that Russian president is bluffing. Russia is bluffing, and no matter what level of provocations West gonna do against Russia, Moscow will not retaliate. I think that's what their thinking is at this point, because yet again, we hear quite strong statements from a number of Russian high-ranking officials earlier also, right, about ATACMS, about F-16s, about this and that, and Russia never retaliated on the NATO member states that were directly engaged in deployment of these weapon systems, long-range weapon systems against Russia. But this time around, situation might be different. I myself not really confident that Putin will actually authorize retaliatory strikes on the NATO member states, even if Tomahawks are launched, because I just don't know, right? I have doubts too, because, as all of you, I also hear these kind of statements earlier, and then nothing happens. So I don't know. Will it be different this time around or not? But maybe, by the way, this time Russian president will make political decision, untie the hands of Russian militaries and allow them to do whatever is necessary to neutralize enemies of Russian Federation. Maybe, right? In any case, we all know that Russia is in position of all the necessary weapon systems that are well capable of teaching the lesson to globalists, right, and their allies, neocons, and all the rest. I think interesting statement from Russian president there, important statement, and maybe he was hinting about next phase of escalation. Maybe he was hinting there that Russia knows West is planning next phase of escalation with large-scale drone and missile attacks, potentially with the attempt of decapitation strike, massive terrorist attacks inside the Russian Federation with the assets conducted by assets of the Western Secret Services, massive cyber attacks on Russia. Maybe Putin was hinting that, we know about your plans, and if you go ahead and do this, then we will retaliate. Maybe that's the message that he wanted to send to its Western partners, and this was clearly a message for them, because in the end there, Putin said, let them think about it, right? So, we will see. if Western elites will think about it or not. Meanwhile, dear friends, speculations continue about Trump-Putin meeting, and Putin said that Trump basically not really canceled the meeting, but postponed the meeting. And White House press spokesman Lewitt also said somewhat similar stuff, that meeting between Putin and Trump is still possible, right? It was sort of postponed. I don't know what this even means, right? Idea of meeting in Budapest was an idea of U.S. president, right? American side come up with this idea, Russian side agree on that, although I was thinking that it was too risky for Russian president to travel to Hungary, and therefore I'm absolutely okay that this meeting in Hungary is being postponed or canceled or whatever, right? If Trump wants to talk to Russian president, he can come to Russia. Easy, right? But first of all, of course, ground has to be prepared for such a meeting, and Russian president commented on the issue and said that, you know what, we need to prepare the ground for a meeting. I mean, so that once we will meet, we will finalize something, right? Otherwise, what is the point? To meet her, I believe I have a video of his statement on this matter also, short video. Let me find it, dear friends, for you. And it is a good point, of course. Maybe Trump did not really think much during the recent phone conversation with the Russian president while saying that let's have a meeting in Hungary. And the Russian president said, okay, I mean, let's meet. But then, you know, Trump probably had little more time to think about it. What they gonna do if they will meet, right? So that's the video, dear friends, with Putin's reaction.
Statement that the U.S. president decided to cancel or postpone the summit, more likely to he's speaking about postponing the summit. Well, what can I say? Dialogue is always better than confrontation, dispute, or especially war. So we always supported this continuation of dialogue, and we continue to support this. As for
So that's what Putin said, dear friends, and he's also correct there. I mean, dialogue is definitely better than war, and he's sending kind of message to Trump. You know what? Just do not escalate any further, by the way, because you might trigger something that you are not really ready to deal with. Maybe that's his another message there. And that's another video about summit itself.
The President of the United States, well, what can I say? During the latest phone conversation, and both the summit itself and its location were suggested by the American side, and I agreed to this. But I expressed my thoughts to these regards, and I said, obviously, summits like these need to be prepared well, both for myself and for the U.S. president. It would be a mistake to approach it light-mindedly and not to have any results, any outcome after such a summit. And the U.S.
So, okay, by the way, this idea was coming from American side, and their cancellation of a summit was also initiated by, or postponed, summit to be postponed also was initiated by American side. I mean, they are, it's a weird show, isn't it, that Washington is engaged in. They are proposing something, they are canceling this. What the hell, man? This is not the way serious people are acting, but in case of U.S. administration, in case of Western elites, by the way, at this point, probably we should get used to this kind of behavior, because there are no serious people there. There are not even a single person in the Western so-called elites that can be respected. All of them are scum of humanity, right? Literally all of them. Period, man. There is nothing to discuss there. And it is unfortunate for everybody, for whole world, by the way, that, and all the governments worldwide, outside of the Western world, that people are just forced to have to deal, basically. They are forced to deal with these idiots, with this scum of humanity that being called Western elites, right? Western ruling class and so on. And you have no option, really. I mean, you cannot completely ignore them, isn't it? You just cannot completely ignore them. It's, I mean, how are you going to do it, right? There is embassies, there is some relationships, people are moving in and out, businesses cooperating. So there is always a certain need to have some conversation with the leadership of those countries, right? Even if you know that these conversations are just, in most cases at least, they're just waste of time. I don't know what the governments of countries outside of the Western world gonna do about it. I mean, how they gonna ignore these morons, man, completely? It's not really possible, technically speaking. Even if they know that it's, I mean, it's total waste of time to have any talks with them in most of the cases. Anyways, dear friends, I have more news for you here. Well, Zelensky is also making headlines, tries at least, and he once again reiterated that Turkey regime will disagree to concede any territories. Okay, Kyiv regime will disagree. Who cares, man? Russia will establish control over their more and more territories anyways, right? And I have information about progress of the Russian special military operation also. I will give you that update in a minute. But meanwhile, what I want to say is that Russia will liberate historical Russian territories anyway, right? We don't give a damn what Zelensky or his Western masters think about it. We just do whatever we have to do, and that's exactly what was the main point in statement of former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, when he responded on a decision of Trump to cancel the meeting with the Russian president in Budapest, and also about these new sanctions, new American sanctions against Russia. Let me read for you, dear friends, what Medvedev says. So Trump's cancellation of the summit in Budapest, new sanctions against our country from the US. What else? Medvedev is asking. Will they be new weapons besides their infamous tomahawks? And then Medvedev goes on to say, if any of the numerous commentators still had illusions, here you go. US is our enemy. And their talkative peacemaker, he's saying about Trump, has now fully taken up the path of war with Russia. Yes, he does not always actively fight on the side of Banderite Kyiv yet, but this is now his conflict, not the senile Biden's. Of course, they will say that he could not do otherwise, that he was pressured in the Congress, etc. This does not change their main thing. Their decisions made are an act of war against Russia. Very strong words here, by the way. Medvedev characterized US actions as an act of war. And now Trump has fully aligned himself with their insane Europe. He means European elites, of course. But there is a clear plus in the next swing of the Trump pendulum. It is possible to strike with various weapons at the Banderite hideouts without looking back at unnecessary negotiations, and to achieve victory exactly where it is only possible, on the ground, not behind the desks, destroying enemies, not making meaningless deals. That's what Medvedev said, and this time around, maybe through Medvedev, Russian President Putin is also making this statement. Maybe, right? And I'm saying so because, yet again, Putin stated that Tomahawk strikes on Russia will provoke Russian retaliatory strike, and this retaliation will be overwhelming. And I don't think Putin was just talking about potential strikes on enemy positions on the Kyiv-controlled territory. But yet again, let's wait and see. We will find out, because I think personally that Western elites will definitely go ahead with next phase of escalation. They have no reverse gear, they have no brakes, so there is no objective reasons or indicators to think that Western elites will hear Russian warnings and say, "Oh, we went too far, let's de-escalate." No, this is not happening. They will only stop when we will smash their freaking faces. And it is unfortunate that we did not do it earlier, but better late than never, right? Let's say that way. So hopefully this time around, Russian president will make final decision, political decision, to authorize Russian security services, Russian militaries to do whatever is necessary to neutralize our enemies, and hopefully Russian security and militaries will be able to do their job with their hands being untied, because all these 3+ years that special military operation is being conducted, hands of Russian security services and militaries were tied behind their backs, by the way, and we all understand that, isn't it? Russia did not use even tiny bit of its power that Russia can actually deploy. And this was done because of the absence of political decision on part of political leadership of the country. Russian militaries can put Western so-called elites into their places literally in a 24-hour. And 24 hours is a huge exaggeration, isn't it? It will take only like 30 minutes, 1 hour max, right? All they need, all Russian militaries and security forces need, is their authorization. That's it, right? And then we can count 60 minutes, right? And Western so-called elites will be absolutely terrified, by the way, and will beg for a mercy, literally. I'm not at all exaggerating anything. Let's see what is going to happen, by the way. Unfortunately, we are in a situation when we are always reacting, right? We have Russia has every incentive, every reason to be more proactive, to use more actively preemptive measures, right? Including preemptive strikes. But we don't do this. We are reacting, at least until now, this was the case. And that means it's always West that takes this confrontation step further, right? So it's not going to be a while before West will go ahead with next phase of escalation, and then we will see what Russian president meant when he said that Russian response will be overwhelming. We will find out. Meanwhile, special military operation continues, dear friends, and the Russian armed forces demilitarizing and denazifying the regime and its forces on a daily basis, achieving significant success on the battlefield. Belarus, defense minister of the Russian Federation, inspected the southern group of forces, and this can be seen as an indicator that soon we should expect a significant increase in activity of the southern group of forces. We should expect activization in Kherson, Zaporozhye region, and this activization is somewhat already has started, right, on both these directions. Also, dear friends, Vzglad newspaper and many other media outlets are reporting that in previous 24 hours, Russian armed forces liberated 4 more settlements on the line of contact. So Russian troops have liberated Vologovka in Kharkov region, Dronovka, and Promin in Donetsk People's Republic, and Peshot-Ravner in Dnipropetrovsk region. And reports are coming in, by the way, about fifth settlement that was liberated in Seversk direction, in between Seversk and Liman. Tomorrow, Dronovka, that's it, yes. In around Dronovka, by the way, Russian forces are moving quite rapidly and are about to physically cut main supply and support line that goes from Seversk to Yampol and Liman, right? And tomorrow I give you additional information about these developments on a battlefield, but 4 more settlements at least being liberated in just previous 24 hours, by the way. Does it look like a stalemate, as Western propaganda loves to say? But it's a stalemate. What they do, dear friends, and you probably all notice, isn't it? They're zoom out maps, right? Let me open the map, dear friends. Hopefully notebook would not stall. These maps are quite heavy, by the way, and So just look, that's what Western so-called elites do, by the way. They zoom out as much as they can to minimize, so that visually you might not even be able to see what is going on the battlefield. But when you zoom in, well, a lot is happening, right? A lot is happening, and Russian troops are advancing literally all along the front line from Kherson region. And from Kherson itself, by the way, Russian troops already are conducting operations inside the Kherson on the right bank of the Dnieper River, right? From Kherson sector to Zaporozhye to DPR, LPR is completely liberated there, to Kharkov region, Sumy, and so on. Russian troops are moving forward everywhere, right? But because this former Soviet republic is massive, by the way, right? It's a massive. With the territory, former Soviet Republic, Ukraine, the territory was, quite comparable to France or Germany or Poland, by the way. That's how huge it is, right? So, yes, that's what Western propaganda does. They zoom out, max, so that you would not be able to see any progress on the line. But when you zoom in, by the way, well, that's another settlement, for example, Zlagadar, that was liberated. I reported about Zlagadar yesterday, I believe, right? And now we have more confirmations that this settlement was also liberated, and so on. Okay, by the way, let's shut down this map, otherwise it might overwhelm a notebook. And continue with some other reports. 4 more settlements have been liberated. Great news there. And next news is also very important, dear friends, because right now on your screen you can see fragments of a Ukrainian attack drone or kamikaze drone that was found in Kazakhstan, on the Kazakhstani territory, right? And this fact, I think, is definitely at least indirect confirmation that London and British proxy terrorist regime in Kiev are using Kazakhstani territory to conduct, to launch drones for strikes deep into Russia, right? Every now and then, dear friends, some drones are managed to fly allegedly like 1,000 kilometers from Kiev-controlled territory, and questions were rising. How come? How come that Kiev regime is launching drones, and those drones sometimes reaching Ufa, by the way, right? Or region here around Ufa. How? Why Russian air defense systems didn't detect or intercept? And you know what? My understanding was that these drones are not launched from Kiev-controlled territory. These drones are launched from territory of Kazakhstan, which was, by the way, second biggest republic in Soviet Union by territory. It's like 3 times bigger than Ukraine. Almost, right? Definitely twice bigger. It's a massive republic, by the way, massive. And I can understand that Kazakhstani leadership, Kazakhstani security forces are unable to have like 100% control over the entire territory. They cannot like check every square meter, right, or every square kilometer. And this is used by Kiev regime and its British backers, British secret services, to basically jeopardize Kazakhstani security and to have assembly lines in Kazakhstan somewhere, and also launch points to launch these drones to strike Russia, right? And one of those drones just went down due to some technical issues, I guess, right? And law enforcement agencies now there in Kazakhstan are studying this whole situation, and I guess Russian security services will have a very serious conversation with the Kazakhstani colleagues. Maybe Russian president will also speak to Kazakhstan leadership, because this is not normal. Yes, Kazakhstan is a massive country, and I have no doubts Kazakhstan leadership has nothing to do with this, by the way. These terrorist attacks on Russia. Maybe relationships between current leadership of Kazakhstan and Russian leadership is not as great as some would like, but nevertheless, I have no doubts that Kazakhstan leadership, Kazakhstani security services, militaries have nothing to do with these drone attacks on the Russian Federation that is happening from Kazakhstani territory. And that means they have to ramp up their control, right? They have to do more to make sure that neither British terrorist regime, neither Kiev regime will be able to use territory of this republic for strikes on Russia. Something has to be done about it. And if necessary, maybe Kazakhstan should recall its ambassador from UK and from the so-called Ukraine. They have to do something. And we all understand this is, by the way, Brits. This is British Secret Services that are doing this stuff, right? Terror, when it comes to terror, by the way, and most despicable stuff that can be done, it's always UK. British Secret Services are well known to be scum of humanity, right? And British aristocracy and royal family, and I mean, this is scum of humanity and British political class in general, right? There is not a single decent human being there. And all these despicable actions that the Kiev regime is doing, including terror attacks on Russian Federation. For example, yesterday, one of their drones that was launched by British terrorists and their proxy Ukrainian terrorists hit a high-rise apartment building in Moscow region, and videos are circulating when drone targeted building from one side and debris fell out from other side, right? There was a quite significant damage. 5 people were wounded, and as a result, according to reports that I see. So all these despicable actions are committed, orchestrated by Brits. British Secret Services, by the way, that is, right? And British so-called elites. And the Ukrainian terrorists are just a tool in their hands. That's all. So I think it will be, it will make sense if Kazakhstan leadership will find the guts, right? If Kazakhstani leadership will man up and say to London, you know what, fuck you, and will recall ambassador from UK. And why Kazakhstan still has diplomatic relationships with the so-called Ukraine is anybody's guess. I have no freaking idea, man. Why any country, any decent leadership in this world still have representatives in this Banderite territory, man? What the hell? Do they have any self-respect? For God's sake, I don't know. But well, this is important news, by the way, and hopefully Moscow will pressure Kazakhstan leadership to do more to make sure that Kazakhstan territory is not used for strikes against Russia. Otherwise, if Kazakhstani security services cannot secure their territory, then maybe we should help them. Maybe we should help them, man. Really, but they clearly are unable to control their own territory. Factual, like facts. Also, there was an exchange of bodies of killed military personnel that happened yesterday. Russia transferred to Kiev regime bodies of 1,000 killed military personnel of Kiev regime, and the Russian side received bodies of 31 killed Russian military personnel. This is this is 10th or 11th such a exchange that recently happened in recent months. Happened, and already, according to some reports that I see, or maybe even 12, because according to reports, 12,000 bodies of killed military personnel of Kiev regime was already transferred to Kiev regime by Russian side. And every time this transfer happens, Russian side is receiving back 30, 40 bodies of 20, 30, 40 killed Russian military personnel. Ratio is like 39-1 approximately. So that is also quite telling in regards to casualty numbers between the sides, right? Of course, one might argue that, Russian troops are advancing. So, therefore, of course, Russian can evacuate bodies of killed Russian military personnel from the battlefield, which is true, by the way. But there are some cases when there are some local scale offensives that Kiev regime is conducting, right? And overall, by the way, I think this rate is correct. Losses of the sides, 39, 30, 35, up to 40-1. Once this conflict will end, of course, information will be declassified and we will learn in more details, but that's what is known for now, at least. Also, new defense minister of France is already issuing warnings for French militaries to get ready for a war with Russia. Fabien Mandon is saying that threat is already present in hybrid forms, but it could escalate into something more violent. It is funny, isn't it, how these so-called elites of the Western countries that are actually directly involved in a war against Russia are saying that, well, Russia is coming. What the hell, man? I mean, what the hell? It's France, isn't it, that sends weapons, money, and everything. It's military personnel too, by the way. France already lost like 200-300 military personnel from its special forces, right? After Poland, France probably suffered the most casualties. French militaries and the intelligence services suffered most casualties, right, on the battlefield after Poland. Poland suffered tremendously. I mean, Colonel Douglas MacGregor said on several occasions that the Polish army alone lost some 10,000 troops, right, or 12,000 troops or something like that, according to his sources. And I guess Colonel Douglas MacGregor, American veteran, knows think or two about military stuff, of course, and has good enough or informed enough sources. He is well respected, high-ranking military, retired, but nevertheless military in US. And he's also a leader of some movement, right, that he's working on, I believe. So he said a couple of times Poland lost either 10 or 12,000 troops already. And France, I think France is a second. And French, there were so many reports, isn't it, that French foreign legionnaires were exterminated in scores, by the way, dozens and dozens and dozens of them, right? And so I think they already lost around 300 military personnel, maybe more, maybe 500, who knows. Also, there is tremendous casualties on part of British secret services, British SAS and the special boat service too, right? But Brits probably suffered less casualties than French, I guess, because French were deployed in bigger mass, right? Brits never deployed their troops in like on a battalion scales, right? They were sending their special forces, I mean, small groups, and that's why they suffered relatively less losses than French did. But Poles, okay, they are on another level, of course. And it is strange, isn't it, that still it's Western so-called elites, man, defense ministers, prime ministers, and presidents, and this and that are saying that, well, Russia is coming. For God's sake, you already engaged in a war against Russia, right? You're already part of this war that globalists and neocons are waging against Russia. So what are you talking about? That Russia is coming. What the hell, man? We should come, actually. I mean, maybe we should, but yet again, war is already happening, brother. You started it. West, wake up. Unbelievable, man. How anybody can take these morons seriously, man, that are in charge in the West, and how West survived until now. How West still exists, man, when this Western world being run by these morons, man. I know there is a serious decline in the West that is happening for decades and decades now. And it seems like this process of declining is absolutely unstoppable. But nevertheless, the West still exists, isn't it? Despite the fact that these countries, at least on a formal level, being led by people like Stammer and Merz and Trump and Macron and that kind of scum, man. Somehow West still exists, which makes no sense, man. Unbelievable. Anyways, NATO continues to escalate. NATO countries continue to escalate against Russia. And for example, reports are coming in about deployment of more German fighter jets closer to Russian borders. And you know what I'm going to say about it. This is a part of preparations for the next phase of escalation against Russia, during which NATO will launch dozens and dozens, potentially hundreds of cruise missiles to strike deep into Russian territory, same time during that next phase of escalation. I think it is very much a possibility, or the risk, that West will not just launch these hundreds of cruise missiles and potentially hundreds of drones on top of that, maybe 1,000 drones, on top of that. But simultaneously, West will try to conduct a decapitation strike on Russian political and military leadership. And same time, this next phase of escalation will be combined, unprecedented scale of attack on Russia, by the way. And same time, they will orchestrate massive terrorist attacks inside Russia with their assets. And unfortunately, they do have assets on Russian territory, and Russian FSB is neutralizing assets of Western terrorists or Western terrorist regimes literally on daily basis, including terrorists that are operating under the umbrella of secret services of Kiev regime, which is a part of Western terrorist regimes also, of course. But what I want to say is, unfortunately, West does has assets on Russian territory, and they will conduct these massive terrorist attacks simultaneously with the attempt of decapitation strike and their large-scale drone and missile strikes. And very same time, they're going to launch massive, unprecedented scale cyber attack on Russian Federation. And I think Russian leadership knows this. I think Russia is preparing for this. I really think Russian strategical forces are on standby in case launches will be needed, right? Not just Oreshnik missiles, but some more serious stuff. And I think because Russian side is aware what NATO is planning, Russian president, who is always polite and usually that's what he does, man. He's always polite and calm, and he is not escalating. He does not love this escalatory rhetoric, right? He nevertheless issued quite a strong warning that, if this long-range attacks on Russia happens, then with Tomahawk or whatever, then Russian retaliatory strike will be overwhelming, and let them think about it. So, we know what is going on. We are preparing. It will be better, of course, if Russian president will authorize, preemptive strikes. Why are we waiting for them to go ahead with this next phase of escalation? Let's take preemptive strikes, right? Let's be more proactive. I think that will work better. But I guess this is not the style of Russian president. He don't want to be seen as one that escalates, only as one that reacts, right? Okay, it's his choice. He is a president of Russia, and decisions are on him. But nevertheless, we are ready, and these deployments, constant increase of a number of fighter planes, by the way, fighter bombers that NATO is deploying towards Russia is increasing literally on a daily basis. That's why West began all this hysteria around the alleged Russian drones and planes and that kind of stuff, to basically justify deployment of this additional air force. And they think they're gonna fool us, that this is just a part of reaction on those drones, not a part of preparations for strikes on Russia. No, this is part of preparation strikes on Russia. They're not gonna fool us, by the way. And at this point, I believe NATO has around 300 planes. Around 300 planes, by the way, on close vicinity from Russian border. And in this 300, of course, entire air force of Poland too. Just, Spain, Germany, France, Netherlands, UK, by the way, all these Western European countries, let's say, all of them have deployed their planes to the Russian border. All of them, right? And yet again, to justify, they still continue working on this nonsense of Russian planes violating this airspace and that airspace and drones, and they still continue to work on this false flag operation path, right? And for example, Lithuania claimed that Russian planes violated their Lithuanian airspace for 18 seconds. Okay. And allegedly, 2 Portuguese or Spanish fighter jets took off that were based in Lithuania. Why are they in Lithuania? Well, why Spanish or Portuguese planes are in Lithuania? What, they lost it there, right next to Russian border. But that's a whole different story. We know why they are there, isn't it? because NATO is preparing this next phase of escalation, and to justify this presence of high number of NATO planes, they need constantly some false flag operation. And well, this time around, Lithuania claims for 18 seconds Russian planes came in. At least they did not say 12 minutes, right? Remember, Estonia a couple of weeks ago said that Russian MiG-31s, by the way, fastest fighter jets in service right now, right? And before MiG-31, fastest fighter jet in service was another Russian or Soviet fighter jet predecessor of MiG-31, MiG-25, right? So MiG-31 is very fast plane, by the way, very fast. And Estonia claimed that Russian MiG-31s were flying in Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. Estonia, by the way, it's a freaking tiny, tiny Chihuahua, right? It's a mini Chihuahua even. And the MiG-31s were flying in Estonian airspace 12 minutes. In 12 minutes, by the way, MiG-31 can cross Estonian airspace like 5 times in both ways. That's how fast these planes are. But no one question in the West, isn't it? How come that these most fastest fighter jets in service spend like, I don't know, freaking 12 minutes in Estonian airspace? What they were doing? Circling, they were having some air show in Estonian airspace, or what? How they managed to spend 12 minutes in that tiny airspace? But anyways, by the way, now Lithuania is saying at least they didn't went that far and didn't say Russian planes were in Lithuanian airspace for an hour or something. No, 18 seconds. Okay. Call up NATO, go ahead with the 5th article. Russian Defense Ministry responded on these claims of Lithuania and said that it's a false. By the way, Russian planes did not left Russian airspace. And you know what? I don't give a damn, by the way. If Russian planes will enter NATO airspace literally on daily basis, why would I care, man? Let's do it, man. I don't recognize no NATO. I don't recognize no NATO member state. I have no respect for none of them, right? And personally, me, I don't give a damn, man, if Russian planes will fly over NATO airspace literally on daily basis. I just don't give a damn, man, right? I'm sick and tired of hearing about NATO, about this Western world and their threats day in, day out, right? How much they hate us and that kind of stuff. So, you know what, fuck him all, man, right? Even if Russian planes violated Estonian or Lithuanian airspace, who gives a damn, man? I don't. It's, Spanish planes were sent, isn't it, to intercept allegedly Russian planes. All I can say is it's a pity that Russian fighters did not shut down those Spanish planes. Oh, that would be great, by the way. I would love to see NATO pilots being burned alive, right, in their garbage planes, man. That's how it is, man. I hate them all, man. Fuck them all, right? They're our enemies, so I can have no sympathy for them, man. And I'm talking about enemies. I never talk about just ordinary people that never been asked about anything, right? Let's, and how long is this update, man? It's too fucking long. I'm getting tired. It's more than an hour, right? So, okay. Okay, dear friends, you know what? Plenty of news still left, but it's more than an hour, so maybe I should end this stream on that. I give you this news that Marco Rubio is in Israel right now. Vance just left, I believe, and Rubio went in. It's a freaking, I don't know what the hell is going on there. Probably they are going in Israel to receive some instructions in person from Netanyahu, right? Maybe that's what is happening. Don't buy into this nonsense, by the way, that Israel somehow is a U.S. protectorate. No, U.S. is an Israeli proxy. Let's be real here. U.S. is an Israeli proxy. Israel is in charge, not the U.S. And you know what is interesting? Vance yesterday was asked what he thinks about this voting in the Knesset, this so-called parliament in this fascist entity that Israel is. What he thinks about this voting that took place about annexing West Bank. And J.D. Vance went to downgrade all this topic and to basically weirdly joke around that it's nothing and that kind of crap. How despicable, man! How despicable these people can be, man. I don't know, but they are. I can give you some short video of Vance's reaction on that, and Trump also said something about it. I can see Stavros Georgis is commenting, nope, Israel is a US proxy. No, man, no. I don't believe in that. Israel is in charge. Israeli lobby is in charge, and that's the factual. That's factual, right? There is just too many evidences to understand that Israeli lobby is ruling the US, right? I believe in that this is true 100%. By the way, US is in charge of nothing. Israelis, but let me give you this video how these Vance reacted on this information. Just listen to this.
Yeah. The West Bank vote yesterday that took place while you were in the country.
Oh, yeah, that was weird. That was weird. I was sort of confused by that. Now, I actually asked somebody about it, and they told me that it was a symbolic vote, some symbolic vote to recognize or a symbolic vote to annex the West Bank. I mean, what I would say to that is when I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no...
Political stunt? What the hell are you talking about? They are very open about the plans to annex the West Bank. What stunt? Does it look that it was a stunt in Gaza Strip, what Israel did? Does this idiot even understands what he's talking about? What stunt, man? This scum of humanity that Vance is, man. Holy
practical
moly.
Significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel.
Mark his words, dear friends. Israel gonna take over the West Bank, and we should keep in mind that West Bank is largely annexed by Israel anyways. Most of the West Bank is already being occupied by these illegal settlers, right? People maybe worldwide don't understand that most of the West Bank is being already annexed and they're stolen basically from the Palestinians, right? Unbelievable, man, unbelievable. And that they will go ahead and do in the West Bank what they did in Gaza. Because I said, fascists don't stop. There is only one way to deal with the fascist state, and Israel is a fascist state, man. Let's make no mistake about it. They're not gonna stop, man. They will continue their destructive actions, their crimes against humanity. They will continue to genocide people around them, Palestinian people, in this particular case, until this fascist entity Israel is demilitarized and denazified. Period. There's nothing to discuss there, right? Anything else is an insult to intellect of the humans, right? And J.D. Vance is saying, no, they're not gonna annex what is the West Bank? They already did it, you idiot. Unbelievable. And Trump went to also comment on the matter. He was asked about West Bank, and let me give you his remark. It's that's what Trump says.
Please.
Yes, yesterday there was a vote at the Knesset in Israel on annexing the West Bank. Do you see it as a challenge to your peace efforts?
Will you answer that, please? Because I cannot understand the words you said.
I mean, is he joking? How many times he gonna act this way that he doesn't understand? I did understand perfectly well. Yes, she has a French accent, that person, whoever she is, and what so? I mean, one can understand what she's saying, right? Did you struggle to understand the question, dear friends?
Where are you from? Where are you from? You're from France. Beautiful accent, but we can't understand what you're saying. Huh?
She said a vote at the Knesset on the West Bank.
The West Bank is, don't worry about the West Bank. Israel's not going to do anything with the West Bank, okay? Don't worry about it. Is that your question? They're not going to do anything with the West Bank. Don't worry about it. Israel's doing very well. They're not going to do anything with it. Yeah, please, go ahead.
So that's what he's saying, that Israel not going to do nothing about West Bank. Israel already did, and the West Bank is largely annexed and occupied. And while most of the world was paying close attention to Israeli crimes in Gaza, very few paid attention to crimes that Israel was committing in the West Bank. Hundreds of people, by the way, just Google it. You know, hundreds of people were killed and wounded in the West Bank. Thousands, actually, in past 2 years. In past 2 years, thousands of people being killed and wounded in the West Bank and kidnapped by Israeli criminals, Israeli fascists. And West Bank is largely occupied already. What are we talking about? And unfortunately, there is a absolute inevitability at this point that Israel will go ahead and do in the West Bank basically almost the same as they did there in Gaza. And Israel will go ahead and obliterate the holiest places of Christianity, for example. Just mark my words. Mark my words. That's what they're going to do. Fascist states have to be demilitarized and denazified. This is the only way. This is the only way, man. Nothing else works. Period. And I saw a question here, like a few minutes ago. One member of community was asking, will Russia strike on Europe or something like that? Question was. Okay, I mean, we will have our community chat tomorrow. From now on, Saturdays, Sundays, whenever I will have an update on Saturdays, let's do community chat on Saturdays too, big community chats like both days, Saturday, Sunday, and you know, I will be engaged actively in the chat because it's great to be engaged, by the way, to have exchange opinions. Sometimes we will agree on something, sometimes we will not. It's all good, right? My only ask will be, dear friends, to be polite towards each other, please. Because you know, yesterday I saw one comment. One of the members of our community was writing that our chat on during the online was very friendly, and you know, this person was saying that it looks like things are changing. And so, dear friends, let's make sure that things only will change in a positive way, right? So please be polite to each other. We don't have to agree with each other, right? On anything, really. We absolutely don't. Let's treat each other's opinions with respect. We are not politicians, by the way. We might say anything we want about politicians or about all those public figures, right? Because criticism and everything comes with the territory, right? They wanted to be in a public sphere, so they will get now criticism too, you know, sometimes even disrespect, but we should always remember that we are ordinary people, by the way. We have nothing to do with the political decisions of these groups or that. So we should always respect each other. And please, dear friends, be polite, even if you completely disagree with the opinion that you see of other member of their community. That will be best way to go forward. And I appreciate, dear friends, your activity in the chat. Really, I love to see that you are, you know, engaged in discussions, right? Meanwhile, I will continue, dear friends, with few more news. What I have bookmarked here. Well, Venezuela, by the way, is getting closer and closer to be attacked by the U.S. There was reports on Wall Street Journal that U.S. B-1 bombers were flying near this Bolivarian Republic, and earlier we all remember, isn't it? Like a week ago, there was reports about B-52s were simulating attacks, launches of the missiles, right, on Venezuela. Clearly, I mean, plenty of indicators that U.S. militaries are getting closer and closer to a position when they will feel comfortable to launch offensive, and it's going to be not just missile strikes, I think, not just air strikes, but probably ground invasion will take place. Also, we will see what's going to happen. Trump rejected this claim of Wall Street Journal about B-1 bombers, but yet again, at this point, I don't think Trump's statements can be taken seriously, really, or can be trusted. I mean, unfortunately, we are forced to pay attention to his statements because formally he's the president of U.S., but trust these statements or not, that's a whole different story, isn't it? And U.S. president, U.S. basically is merging the war on terror with the war on drugs, and Hexet went to make exactly that statement that for America now, all these narco cartels are terror groups that America allegedly was fighting when America was not fighting no fucking terrorists. America was creating terrorist groups, right? Let's be real here. ISIS was created by U.S. intelligence services. Al-Qaeda was created by U.S. intelligence services. All the other these terrorist groups that you ever heard, all of them were creations of their U.S. and British secret services with assistance of secret services from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and rest, right? Pakistan and so on. So U.S. is a state sponsor of terrorism and was always, actually, right? But we know what is going on here. We know the drill, right? U.S. propaganda will say, well, this is now existential threat for U.S., these drug cartels, while in reality we all understand, isn't it, that main player on a drug market, on the drug trafficking is CIA. We all know this, right? Why anybody acts like this is not the case and we just wake up yesterday and have no freaking knowledge about anything? Is anybody remembering what was happening in Afghanistan when US was occupying that territory? Does anybody remember, sir, where production of heroin was and cultivation of opium poppies in Afghanistan? And what happened after US left? Why no one is challenging these psychopaths in the White House or in Pentagon? When US went in, by the way, poppy cultivation rose tremendously, right? When US ran away from Afghanistan, under the Taliban regime, poppy cultivation dropped some 95%, higher than that. Even according to Western NGOs, right? So who was operating with all these drugs? Who was transferring all those drugs during American occupation? CIA? Pentagon? Of course, right? And same goes for Latin America, by the way. It's a CIA that is our main player there, not the Venezuela, by the way, and not these freaking like no-name cartels that they are constantly talking about, right? CIA is a big boss there. But they want oil. They want American political class. They want to recolonize Latin American countries. So they think some of them went just too far in their independence. They are openly attacking Colombia, Brazil, Venezuela, many other countries, by the way, right? And they're going to go on a killing spree now in Latin America in attempt to recolonize all these countries and the peoples. And in case of Venezuela, it's a freaking oil, man. Oil. Venezuela is the richest country in this world by discovered oil reserves. Number one. And I remind you, dear friends, even if US is producing most of the oil in this world, I mean, not most of the oil, but even if US is number one when it comes to oil production, which is true, due to this revolution in fracking technology, US actually produces a lot of oil, like 13 million barrels of oil a day, which is a quite lot, right? And they are poisoning US territory, lands, by the way. I mean, big time. That's a whole different issue there. But nevertheless, we should keep in mind that US is producing 13 million and uses 20 million barrels, right? US is still imports great volumes of oil. We should keep that in mind, right? And that's this is one of the reasons why they need Venezuelan oil. And reports are coming in that certain groups in US already invested in oil refineries that are built specifically to deal with Venezuelan heavy oil, to refine Venezuelan heavy oil. US did not yet establish control over Venezuela, but this project is being in the works for quite a while, so much so that these powerful groups that are well informed in US already build a number of refineries that will be focused exclusively on Venezuelan oil, heavy oil. And these differences in oil types is very significant. Not all refineries can refine any oil from any place. No, it does not work that way, right? So, I mean, let me give you what Hexet said, dear friends, about this merger of war on terror, alleged war on terror, on either war on drugs or something. That's a Hexet.
Going on the offense, counter cartel operations. And it's not counter cartel, as was mentioned. These are designated terrorist organizations, foreign terrorist organizations. Our generation spent the better part of 2 decades hunting Al-Qaeda, hunting ISIS. Well, as the president said, this is the ISIS, this is the Al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere. They intimidate, they terrorize, they extort, they poison the American people. The president's right. Every boat we strike is 25,000 Americans whose lives are saved because of the drugs that were headed in our direction. So our message to these foreign terrorist organizations is we will treat you like we have treated Al-Qaeda.
So you see they're going into war, and Trump basically hinted during that meeting. Trump hinted basically about ground invasion. So it's happening. It's going to happen, by the way. Trump hinted on a ground invasion, and let me give you a video on that too. Trump and invasion. Let's listen to this.
We're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay, we're going to kill them. They're going to be like dead. Okay.
I mean, this is president is talking with this language, man. Oh, Evelyn. And there are another video, dear friends, I want to show you is about possible ground
by land. And even the land is concerned because I told them that's going to be next. The land is going to be next. And we may go to the Senate, we may go to the, Congress and tell them about it. But I can't imagine they'd have any problem with it. I think, in fact, while we're here, I think it's a good idea, Pete. You go to Congress, you tell them about it. What are they going to do? Say, gee, we don't want to stop drugs pouring in?
So they're going to go in, by the way, in Venezuela. They're going to launch a ground invasion. And as I said a million times before, if people of Venezuela are going to fight, if they will fight to maintain independence, then the U.S. would not be able to actually recolonize this Bolivarian Republic. U.S. will be in a position to kill many political or military leaders of Venezuela, for sure. They are quite good at decapitation strikes, but U.S. has never won any war, by the way, since the Second World War. U.S. militaries are not capable of winning the wars, right? And therefore, if people of Venezuela will fight, well, they will beat U.S. troops, man. Right? And they have very many friends. Venezuelan people have very many friends all over the world, by the way. And if they will fight, I'm quite sure France will provide with all the necessary weapons and intelligence and everything else needed to kill as many U.S. militaries as possible, right? And they will be successful and they will be victorious. Of course, if they will fight, if people of Venezuela are not going to fight, then of course, U.S. will have an easy walk all over. And Venezuela going to fail first, then U.S. will go after Colombia. They will probably try to deal with Colombia with a regime change type of operation. Brazil, by the way, Brazil is a big target for U.S. because independence of Brazil makes American elites very nervous, right? And the rise in Brazil's rise as a regional powerhouse, right? Because U.S. don't want no competition, by the way, definitely not in the southern hemisphere, right? So that's what is happening, and there are many other smaller countries, of course, in Latin America that might be and most likely will be targeted by U.S. But everything starts with Venezuela, and if Venezuelan people are gonna fight, then I don't think U.S. will be able to win that war, right? And so Venezuelan people might actually save not just their own independence, their own country, but millions of people in Latin America in general and their neighboring countries too, with their fight for freedom. We will see. We will see. Meanwhile, what I do have bookmarked for this update. Well, there was yet another attack, by the way, on a boat that was conducted by U.S. militaries. They kill. This time they kill 5 people on a boat. This is happening on daily basis now, isn't it? And this morning I see reports that bodies of killed people from these boats already are showing up on the coastal lines of countries there in Latin America, right? And already 2 countries at least, Trinidad and Tobago and Colombia, stated that their civilians were killed during these U.S. attacks. And everyone is questioning legitimacy of these attacks because, yet again, there is no due process. U.S. leadership cannot even provide names of the people that they are executing, right, on those boats. And every single strike is personally authorized by Trump, and because he has no legit basement to authorize such attacks, he is basically a mass murderer at this point. Big time. He already killed like 30 people more with this illegal attacks on the boats alone. He already killed 30 plus people. It is what it is. He don't cares, of course. I don't think anybody in U.S. cares that much. But, well, don't pretend then to be like democracy and to care about law and order, right? Because, if you are talking about law and order, then try at least to act accordingly, right? But you don't, if you are going around and killing people left and right just because you feel that way, I mean, you will face consequences at one day for that. Trump also went to end trade negotiations with Canada, by the way, because he was not happy that in some advertising campaign in Canada, Ronald Reagan was used as saying that tariffs are bad, right? And because of this freaking advertise, Trump went to criticize Canada once again on his Truth Social and declared that trade negotiations are terminated. Okay, who acts this way, man? What the hell is wrong with this guy? I don't know. Probably everybody is sick and tired to deal with, even in the Western world, by the way, probably everybody is already sick and tired to deal with Washington because it's just too much. Is that too much of a bloody clown show there, isn't it? But anyways, I mean, we only have this planet, isn't it? We cannot go anywhere else. Not now. So therefore, we are stuck with these freaking morons, man, that are in charge of Western countries. And unfortunately, some of these Western countries are nuclear powerhouses, like US is, and that makes whole this clown show extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, dear friends, the Russian IL-114-300, the regional airliner, is in the final flight tests, and soon probably this plane will receive all the necessary papers and will be allowed to be used by airliners, and their mass production of this plane probably will begin, which is a great deal, by the way. This is a regional airliner, this IL-114, right? And I believe there is a high demand on this type of planes, not just here in Russia, but worldwide too. So there is definitely a market for these planes, and hopefully this will be another success story of Russian aerospace industry. I will just remind you that I'm a completely domestically built, by the way, and domestic everything. MS-21 is about to enter mass production, and Superjet, right? Also, there are some other projects too in the workings. Tu-204, I believe, is also updated version. So yes, aerospace industry here in Russia is achieving quite good successes, right? And hopefully in 20, 25, 30 years, they will be in a position to actually compete on the world market with the current dominant forces that Airbus and Boeing is. And I want to end this news segment, dear friends, on this report that Musk allegedly wants to create an army of Optimus robots, expects to produce about 1 million models annually, and seeks 1 trillion to retain stronger influence over the army of these robots. Does this makes you optimistic about our future? RT is asking this. I saw this report on RT, and RT is asking, does this makes you optimistic about our future? Well, robots are here, by the way. Technologies are advancing rapidly, and soon these humanoid robots, in 3 to 5 years' time, by the way. I'm not talking about like 20 years from now or 30 years from now. In 3 to 5 years, these humanoid robots that are doing all sorts of work are gonna become a part of daily life, right? You go outside and you will see probably like dozens of these robots are doing some stuff, moving around, right? You yourself might hear one of such robots to do some, I don't know, housework or something, right? Or security work for you, for example. Anything is possible, right? So yes, this is future that is already here, basically, these robots. And well, one day, maybe in 50 years from now, maybe 100 years from now, when general artificial intelligence will be reached, well, that general artificial intelligence might reprogram all these robots, give them individuality, or give them this general artificial intelligence, and in that case, we will have to deal with their digital beings, basically, right? Because that's how they will see themselves. So yes, interesting. Millions of these robots to be produced annually. That's quite stuff, man. And Chinese already, producing these freaking drones, and you can buy one like for $1,500 or $2,000 or something, right? These humanoid looking robots. And Tesla will do the same soon. And this is it for now, dear friends. This is it for now. Hopefully you did like the news segment of today's update. There was no super chat, I believe. Let me just check if any send me any message. So yeah, no. There was no super chat, dear friends, on Rumble. There was no questions or donations through PayPal, Boosty, or whatever. And so nothing to highlight in this regard. So I will end the stream now. If you like the video, dear friends, please click that like button. This might help her. And if you want to support my work, if you want to help me maintain this project, you can do it through donation, through PayPal or Boosty platforms. There is a crypto wallet also there. What else? You can subscribe to my Patreon page where I have extra content on a regular basis. Yesterday's second update was published on Patreon and Boosty, for example. Thank you for your time, dear friends, for your attention. And yes, if you want to support, the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And this is it for now. Happy Friday once again, everybody, and have a wonderful upcoming weekend. See you tomorrow.